If you don't mind giving away free money to the government for them to do whatever they want with, don't do any tax planning. And that really is the gist of it. Tax planning allows you to keep more of your money for yourself and your future. So I say it's really important, but other individuals say that's just not something I want to deal with. Just do tax planning. I know you said it's something that's like a super high priority, but your business is supposed to give you the ability to do what you want in life with your goals, your vision, and give you the life that you want. So why not plan for that in advance? Biggest mistakes: listening to internet advice. Social media advice has gotten out of hand, and I have made it my mission to kind of combat some of that. So be very careful and very wary about what you hear on the internet, and do your research, because sometimes people are telling you half-truths or things that only apply to certain segments. Nexus. As we are in the e-commerce spectrum, we all know that we don't know what we don't know, and we accidentally sell somewhere and it may create income that's going to be taxed in another state, and not knowing those things up front, if that state has a higher tax rate than you do and they're not a reciprocal state where you get to deduct it on yours, you may be getting double taxed on income and not realize it until it's too late.
Taxes, bookkeeping, and trying to figure out your profitability. Those are all things that we should be doing as business owners, but let's be honest, it's oftentimes last priority for us. So that's why I'm so excited to have Amanda Adams. She is a CPA, and she helps e-commerce sellers understand their bottom line, their top line, everything in between, as well as planning for taxes and not just having to try and wing it at the end of the year. So Amanda, I am so grateful for you to be able to join us, and I'm really excited for this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. It is such an honor and pleasure to be on with you. I've seen some of the other work you do, and you're doing such a great job. So a little about me and how I got into this. I stumbled into my career. My husband, boyfriend then, had never done his taxes, and I learned how to do them with a pencil and paper. You know, you put pen to paper, but with taxes, you can't really do that. It's too final. So, and an instruction book. And from there, I have gone through a master's in taxation and gotten my CPA license. But one of the biggest struggles I see for people is the connection between all the parts of their accounting. So just like you said, from that bookkeeping all the way up to taxes and advisory, in some companies, those are all very separate pieces. And so that's why it was really important for me to bring those pieces together in one place, or be willing to work with other individuals in the accounting sphere to make sure that my clients are getting all of those pieces cohesively. Because if you're doing them individually, they're not always looking out for the bigger picture.
I love that, because that is one way that we actually approach the advertising, is looking at it from a goals perspective and then trying to figure out how can you adjust your advertising strategy based on goals. And you're right, it all has to flow together in so many aspects of the business. And so definitely I can see how that can be the case when it comes to bookkeeping. I'm really, really excited for this conversation. I was telling you right before we hit record, this kind of thing is actually kind of top of mind for me as well, just as a business owner. So I'm so excited to pick your brain and get more insights as to like what sellers should be focused on. But my first question would be like, how important is tax planning for your business? I mean, you know, obviously paying our taxes is super important because we can't not, that gets you in big trouble. But as far as the tax planning aspect of it, how much does that matter?
I mean, I guess that really depends on how much you want to pay the government of your money, or money that could be yours. So if you don't mind giving away free money to the government for them to do whatever they want with, don't do any tax planning. And that really is the gist of it. Tax planning allows you to keep more of your money for yourself and your future. So I say it's really important, but other individuals say that's just not something I want to deal with. So it depends on what your goals are.
Yeah, and I would say it's probably most people don't do tax planning, not because it's not a valuable thing to do, as you've stated. Like, obviously, who wouldn't want to pay less taxes? But it's more the, I don't want to deal with it. I don't understand it. So therefore, I'm not going to evaluate it. So hopefully we can peel back the curtain a little bit in this conversation and give people, make it not ambiguous, I guess. But I do have a question. So obviously in the general business world, tax planning is a huge thing. Does that change at all if you're an e-commerce business, or are there certain maybe advantages you can get as an e-commerce business that you wouldn't otherwise?
I would say the difference really that I've seen in e-commerce is seasonality can be an issue. So depending on what kind of products you're selling, if you have really seasonal items, that can be a huge challenge for you and allow for some different tax planning. There's something called annualization of income, where you just change how you report it on your 1040 or on your business return to say, hey, this wasn't earned equally throughout the year. And that actually can be very helpful for you, or very hurtful if it was all earned in a certain quarter and you didn't annualize it the right way and pay the estimated taxes in the right way. So it's just really important to know that that's an option for you to hopefully lower your tax bill instead of raise it.
It's a really interesting point, because there's a lot of e-commerce businesses that do really well during Q4 just due to the nature of, consumerism. So yeah, that's something we're already learning some stuff. This is awesome. So I guess next up, I would say, what should sellers be aware of when it comes to accounting and taxes?
Okay, so this is where I figure we'll spend maybe the bulk of the conversation, is really proper planning. So making sure that you set up your entity structure correctly, set up a separate bank account, make sure that you have good business licenses and permits if those are required, all states, sales tax permits, resale tax. There are so many intricacies to an e-commerce business that sometimes people don't realize that they're needing to think about. And so making sure your setup is good. And then secondly, your maintenance. So I'm not here to talk about bookkeeping or any of those things, but they are vital to tax planning. You can do no tax planning without good maintenance work. So without having a good bookkeeping, do not put your business and personal funds together. No matter what you do, keep them separate. If you have to take money out of your business for personal, because let's be honest, that's our goal with our business, is to be able to take home some money, take it out of the bank before you spend it. So don't spend any of the money out of your business bank account on anything personal. And then make sure you're reviewing your books. So if you have outsourced bookkeeping, if you're doing it yourself, that is fine. Lots of clients DIY it. You can still ask somebody to do a quarterly or semi-annual review to see if there's anything that they can suggest you do differently that would be beneficial to you. So those are just maintenance things. And then when it comes to your taxes, setting up your maintenance means you need to know your numbers. That helps with taxes. You can't do anything for taxes without knowing your numbers. The second big thing is knowing the difference between tax avoidance and tax evasion. Those are two very, very, very different things. And one is illegal and one is completely 100% legal. So tax avoidance is using legal means to lower your tax bill. Tax evasion is doing fraudulent things to lower your tax bill. So make sure that you're working with somebody who is helping you do tax avoidance versus tax evasion. And then lastly, just do tax planning. I know you said it's something that's like a super high priority, but your business is supposed to give you the ability to do what you want in life with your goals, your vision, and give you the life that you want. So why not plan for that in advance?
When you talk about tax planning, is it basically like what you talked about, how you, like if you're reporting things annualized versus just monthly, it's having somebody take a look at all of those numbers. I'm assuming why it's so important to have like up-to-date books, so there's actually something to take a look at, and then just think, how can we either report this or write these things off, or just have someone kind of not play around with some numbers, but just kind of move things around and give you an idea of how you can have things look better at the end of the year?
Yes. Tax planning can be anything from telling you, hey, are you taking a home office deduction? Are you taking mileage if you have to use your vehicle? It depends on if you're drop shipping or not, if you're physically going to a post office. But those are small things. And then tax planning is also retirement planning, using your business as a vehicle to fund your retirement and getting a deduction now and saving on taxes now. Things like being able to hire your children into your business where you're able to write off, right now it's somewhere around $13,000 for 2023 in income that your kids don't have to pick up. It's not taxable to them.
Quick question on that. Is there an age limit for, I'm assuming there's an age?
Yes. So it's children 7 and older. So there is an age limit there, but they can be doing things like cleaning your office or advertising. If you're putting them on any of your marketing stuff, if you're selling online and you're selling children's toys, use your kids and pay them a salary. There are so many things that you can utilize your kids for that help both you and them, because then they can take their earned income, it is earned income, and they can invest in retirement at the age of 7.
Oh, that's awesome. So I'm going to have to talk to you that offline, because I've got 6 kids and 4 of them are within that range. So there's definitely some deductions that I need to look into for myself as well.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So along with that, so that's probably something that I don't know if we're doing for us. What are some of the other biggest mistakes that you see sellers make when it comes to tax planning?
Okay, biggest mistakes. Listening to internet advice. And I know how silly that sounds, as this is going to be on the internet, okay? But social media advice has gotten out of hand, and I have made it my mission to kind of combat some of that. So be very careful and very wary about what you hear on the internet, and do your research, because sometimes people are telling you half-truths or things that only apply to certain segments, and you're taking it thinking, oh, I can tell my tax preparer about this in February when I talk to them, and thinking that you're going to save money, when in reality it never applies to you. That's one of the biggest. Waiting too long. There are some things that you have to do throughout the year for tax planning. So there are some strategies that you have to do as it's going along in 2023, but there are some that will still count for 2023 if you set them up in 2024. So knowing which ones can wait and which ones can't is a big deal. And then lastly, nexus. As we are in the e-commerce spectrum, we all know that we don't know what we don't know, and we accidentally sell somewhere and it may create income that's going to be taxed in another state, and not knowing those things up front, if that state has a higher tax rate than you do and they're not a reciprocal state where you get to deduct it on yours, you may be getting double taxed on income and not realize it until it's too late. So those are some of just the biggest mistakes that I've seen that I would definitely warn you to watch out for.
Yeah, that's definitely, I mean, my next question was going to be how far out should you start planning, but it sounds like almost at the minimum a year in advance, sometimes even 2 years in advance.
Yeah, when you set up your company, when you start thinking about a company is when you should ideally start. Now, let's be honest, not everybody has that luxury, and it is a luxury to be able to tax plan properly. It is. We don't all have the time or the funds. However, it is super important because it can really be costly if you don't get that set up in advance. So I would say as early as possible, but know that there are still some options, can be some options, even if you do it a little bit later than we'd ideally like.
Well, it's definitely good to know, so we don't have to completely lose out on hope. I did have a final question, but I want to jump back to something and kind of dig into some of the issues, because there might be some new sellers who might still be doing this. And that was the question on keeping your business and personal finances separate. Like, you really stress that point, and I myself know that that's not good. Thankfully, we were set up well in our own business when we got started as having, everything completely separated. But that being said, what are potential, like, maybe really drive home, what are the very real issues with doing things that way?
One of the biggest issues is something called piercing the corporate veil. What does that mean? So that means if you have set up your entity to be in and of itself an entity separate from you, when you commingle those funds, what it does is it allows the legal system, should anything ever happen, to come in and say, this is not actually a separate entity. So when you set up an LLC is a limited liability company. Why do we set those up? Because if someone sues us, they can only sue the LLC, the limited liability company. It protects my personal assets, your personal assets, all of our clients' personal assets. But if they lose that, then they are then eligible in the judicial system to come in and take your personal assets if you ever have a judgment against you, because you've essentially told them we are operating as one and the same. Another thing is when you commingle your expenses, and I would never suggest not keeping your receipt. I'm an accountant, so keep your receipts and your documentation. But if you are ever without a receipt, but all of your other expenses are 100% business, if you get audited, the auditor's going to go, what's the chance that this one receipt that they don't have is personal? What are the chances? And they're going to be more logical, right? But if you don't, and you have a bunch of personal and a bunch of business mixed all in between, what are they going to say? Well, this could be personal. I'm going to mark it that because you can't prove it's business, it's personal. And so they're going to start disallowing actual business expenses because you've commingled your funds. Who wants that?
Yeah.
I don't.
No, for sure. For sure. Is there anything that we haven't touched on or that you want to point out that someone really should know, especially e-commerce sellers, when it comes to tax planning?
When it comes to tax planning, you have options. You do. It may not feel like it, but you have options. So I'm going to say again, your home office deduction. That is very standard. If you have a dedicated space, you get to take a part of your bills, your rent, your mortgage insurance, all of those things, you can deduct those things. A portion of them for your home office deduction. That's super important. Knowing what your entity type, so if you're an S Corp, you have to pay yourself a reasonable wage. Knowing that that is a requirement. Again, a lot of people hear on the internet, S Corps, that's how you save taxes. That's not always true. Another thing, you can change from one entity type to another. So as your business progresses, you may step up in what you need and the tax savings that come with it. But sometimes what people don't tell you is with those changes in entity structure come new filing requirements that cost money. So it saved you here and it costs you here. So just making sure that you're working with somebody that you trust, vet your professionals. If you have somebody who you know who's another e-commerce seller who has a great professional, I'm going to tell you, talk to their professional, because word of mouth, people that you trust, is way more important than somebody you find on the internet. And I do a majority of my stuff on the internet, and I'm still going to give you that advice because word of mouth referrals are so important in terms of getting good professionals. So that's a whole lot of advice all thrown in and not very logically put together, but there are so many things to kind of know when you're finding somebody.
Yeah, and it sounds like these are things that really need to be customized. So finding someone who can understand potentially your type of business, how you choose to operate, like you said, like your overall goals, even when it comes to your retirement, and then making sure that, like you said, the business flows into that, because that's kind of what we're here to do and grow in business, and then revenue is certainly a part of that, and then further understanding what to do with your revenue. So this has been absolutely fabulous. I've learned so much myself for sure. I've gotten some tips of my own. And my last question closing out, so if a seller, like they're hearing this saying, okay, I feel like at least to kind of get an idea of tax planning, I know why it's important to me, okay, I need to start doing it. What would be your recommended first step that they should take towards this?
It's kind of a three-pronged approach. So those good accounting records are going to be the very, very first thing. You can't do any planning without that. And then you need a professional. Again, every professional is going to be different. Knowing the difference between a tax preparer. So some people do their own taxes. Some have a CPA or a tax preparer. A tax preparer is not always a tax planner. Some tax preparers can do that. And then there are others who are 100% independently tax planners. So knowing what kind of professional you're looking for, whether you want it to be one person or more than one person working together, that's going to be important for you. And then that last thing, again, do your research. So when your preparer tells you something, when your planner tells you something, you need to be fact checking. And I don't say that in a distrusting manner. What I mean is, ultimately, when you sign at the bottom of your tax return, you're certifying. And when the IRS comes knocking, the IRS comes knocking to you. So those are just really important things to be in the know of what's going on with your tax planning and preparation.
Awesome. Well, that is insanely good advice. So definitely first step, making sure your house is in order, and then going out and finding someone you trust, and then making sure you're an informed enough consumer that you can, like you said, pick someone you trust, but the more informed you are, the better you're going to be at making that decision. So this has been great. So if anyone's listening in and they would really love to get in touch with you, maybe find out a little bit more, see if you're the right person for them to partner with, where would be the best place for them to do that?
LinkedIn. So I am on LinkedIn. I answer my DMs. It may take me a couple of days, but I would love to talk to you. I will send you an invitation if it seems like it might be a good fit. And if not, I have a network of other individuals, because I may not be the right person, but we want everyone to find the right person. So even if you don't think I am, if you hear this and you're in a different industry, I may know somebody that can help you regardless. So that's the great thing about networking, and I would love to be the connection between you and the right person as well.
That is amazing, and we will definitely have those links in the description. So if you need the help, definitely reach out to Amanda. Like she said, if she's not the right fit, she's definitely going to connect you with somebody who is, which is an amazing resource. Amanda, thanks so much for being on today. I highly appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, and have a great day.